Hey, everybody, what's up? Welcome into a free agency, pre-draft, veteran move, cuts and signings version of the Chop Shop. Trey Wingo here with Mark Schlereth. Stink, we're in that sweet spot right now where we're sort of beginning to get draft quarterback frenzy. And because of that draft quarterback frenzy, we're seeing a lot of teams start to make moves, whether it's signing people like J.J. Watt or what we're going to see a lot of over the next couple of weeks, a lot of veterans getting cut because of salary cap issues.
Yeah, one thing that always has driven me crazy about this time of year is you sign a Kyle Van Noy, for instance, to a 4-year deal, or 3, whatever it is, $51 million deal, and he fulfills 1 year of it, and you cut him, and it's crickets from the fan base. But if a guy outplays his contract, he's in year 3 and says, "Hey, man, I want a new deal because I am undervalued now." Every fan jumps on, "Oh my gosh, you don't honor your contract, you son of a bitch."
It's so funny you say that. I put that out on Twitter. I said, this one's for the quote, players should honor their contract crowd. And I got this response back. You love this. What, he made $30 million because the contract says $30 million guaranteed. But no, actually look at the numbers. That's not it at all. There was $15 million guaranteed and another $15 million guaranteed for injury. He wasn't injured. He doesn't get that 15. So magically, a $51 million deal turns into a $15 million deal. I'm no math major, but I know he just lost $36 million. Okay. So don't give me that garbage, that BS about, oh, well, he got this or he got, no, if you sign a deal for $51 million and you walk away with only $15 million of that deal, that is the flex the owners have. So I don't want to hear players should honor their contract because it's garbage because the owners never do it.
No, they don't. And, it's really interesting, too. I always wonder how that affects you as an organization, because Kyle Van Noy came because of Brian Flores.
Right.
And I had talked to Kyle Van Noy. I did a Dolphins game this year and talked to Kyle Van Noy and talked about the integrity and the character and just the authenticity of their head coach, Brian Flores. Now, maybe he has nothing to do with it, and maybe he's upset about it. But the bottom line is, those are the things that can completely derail you as a head coach if everybody starts to look at you and goes, "This dude has no juice." But by the way, just talking about that, at the time, Ryan Fitzpatrick was playing and playing well. Yeah, and correct. I had called a game in San Francisco, in San Jose, where they just absolutely torched the 49ers. I mean, they put it on them, and everything was hunky-dory. And Brian Flores said, "Hey, man, if Tua was my son, I wouldn't play him. Like, he's not ready to play. Like, it's just not, he's not there yet." And then like a week later, he's playing, or 2 weeks later. And
how does that happen?
Yeah. When all those things start to happen, you really realize that the guy that you appointed the head coach truly isn't empowered the head coach. And that's the kind of thing that can derail a head coaching career. So I hope that's not the case for Brian Flores, but these are a couple of things that I look at that just don't really sit well with me as a former player.
Yeah, I saw that you tweeted something, responded to somebody. I think it's somebody that works at your station. Was it Tyler Columbus who said he was 10-6 and started? No, first of all, you should know that everybody is involved with that number, and he didn't start for a bunch of those games, so he didn't go 10-6 anywhere. It drives me crazy. But the interesting thing there is, it wouldn't surprise me at all if somehow, some way, a guy like Van Noy goes back to New England, right? Because nobody is better than Bill Belichick in letting players walk for money and getting them back for pennies on the dollar. Jamie Collins is a perfect example. The great offensive lineman that got paid by the Raiders. Brown went out there. He wasn't going to pay him, but when the Raiders cut him or somebody else cuts him, he's going to bring him back. Bill is a master at that. And the one thing that I think you can say was a great success for the Patriots this year is that they knew they were clearing cap space for 2021. Now, you could argue that some people thought they were intentionally tanking. I didn't buy that. He just knew that 2021 was probably going to be a lot better opportunity for him to stack players and with maybe a better draft pick and have a better outlook in 2021 that they did in 2020.
Yeah, and Kyle Van Noy, don't get me wrong, Kyle was really good in Miami. But you think about it, he was a first-round draft choice that was considered a bust because he went to Detroit. And then he goes to New England and becomes a prominent player. And I think Bill probably does as good a job, if not the best job in the league, of really understanding what your strengths are and then putting you in those positions like not asking you to play to your weaknesses, but asking you to play to your strengths. And I think from a development standpoint, that's a big part of this league that I think too many people put all the emphasis on the draft and not on the development part. And that's why so many guys fail in the draft, because they're not properly developed. They're put in positions to be like, hey, man, go do something you can't do. And then we all act shocked when they fail. Like, oh, can you believe this guy? You know, you act like he runs a 4.85 and you put him in a position to run, you know, to run with a guy that runs
9 routes.
Yeah, to run with a 4.3 and he fails. Like, no, really? You think he's going to? Of course he's going to fail. So I think Bill does a great job with that, putting guys in positions to kind of accentuate their strengths.
Right. And another part of this, which happened on Tuesday when we're doing this, is that Kyle Rudolph has been released by the Minnesota Vikings. And for people that don't know, like, Kyle invested in the community, and he made some $50 million over his 10 years there. I get it. And that's great. But like, he chose to live in Minnesota. He built a home there. They've been involved with charities there. They're staying there. So when you see these things, and let's say Kyle gets picked up, and I'm sure he will, by somebody else, maybe again in New England where they have a need for a tight end, it's just not that easy, right? We all look at these players, whether when we draft them or when they're cut and picked up in free agency, and just, you tend to think of them as an object and not a person. I mean, Kyle set down roots in Minnesota. He could have lived anywhere. So many of these players choose their full-time homes to be in Scottsdale or Florida or somewhere else. No, he bought in. He was all into Minnesota. And now his family and his kids and his wife are still going to stay and go to school there. And he's going to be going playing somewhere else. People don't even ever think about that when they factor this player movement into the equation.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And it obviously is a hard thing. And I think you look at players in general. We tend to make them robots, right? Not make them human. And ultimately the guys, they're humans. And yeah, they want to maximize their value, and they know they have a short time to do it. But the bottom line is, you have emotions, you have wants, and you have desires, and you have family dynamics that play into where you choose to live, where you choose to play, and all those different things. And so often, I think as a fan base, and listen, man, you're blessed. You get to play a game for a living. I get all that stuff. It doesn't make it any easier. It's a hard thing to make a living doing. But we tend to look at them as they're not human. And I tell you what, there are a few guys that maybe aren't. There are a few guys that are a little bit off, like in any profession. There's always going to be a few, but for the most part, guys want the same thing that everybody else wants, right? They want an opportunity to earn a living, an opportunity to raise a family, and they are, they do have feelings, and those feelings do get hurt. Hey, hell, I remember Norv Turner telling me, every time I see Norv Turner too, I thank him for telling me I couldn't play anymore. I mean, Norv Turner just flat out said, hey, we don't think you can play anymore. Find somewhere else to go. All right. Yeah. See you later. 6 years later, 2 Super Bowl wins, Pro Bowls. I was like, thank you for not believing in me. I appreciate it. We laugh about it because we're friends, but that's the business. And it's still, like, today, it still pisses me off now, all those years later, that's the way I was treated at the end of my career in Washington. So yeah, we do have feelings.
And that's going to happen a lot more this year, right? Because we all know that this was a weird year, and it's still continuing as we, thankfully the vaccine is rolling out and things are getting better. But that doesn't mean that the NFL isn't going to try and use this as financial leverage, even though we all know what's going to happen. The TV contracts are up, and there will be increases. It's not going backwards, but they will be able to say, well, we didn't make this revenue, we didn't do that, so the salary cap's going to go down. We're going to see a lot of veteran bloodletting over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, we are. And that's, they've already established, I think, the floor at $180 million, which is, was quite a bit lower. But the bottom line is they haven't established the ceiling. They could say, hey, the ceiling is 180 and the floor is 180. Right. They could do whatever they want. So they'll figure that out. But you're 100% right. You'll see a lot more of these veteran players that have big time contracts that are going to be either released or asked to renegotiate a deal. And that's just going to be standard operating procedure. And you're going to see a lot of, here will be the interesting part about free agency to me, Trey, is usually in free agency. And I've always said this, as a free agent, and I was one, you're more flawed than a drugstore diamond, right? There's something wrong with you usually. Either you've been injured a bunch, or you're an attitude problem, or you're just old, whatever the case may be, right? But normally in free agency, you're paying premium dollars for a declining player. Now, there's going to be a bunch of free agents that hit the market that are going to hit the market, not because they're declining, but just because the cap is going down and they make too much money. And so you may have an opportunity, unlike any other year in free agency, to really ink a good player, a player who's still in his prime, at a reasonable deal. I think the shrewd football teams, I think, are going to be in for a really good opportunity for me to really bolster their roster without overspending on average players. And I think that's a really cool part of this free agency this year.
Absolutely. And one big name has already fallen, even though it can't become official for a while, and that's J.J. Watt agreeing to a deal with the Arizona Cardinals. A lot of people are looking at Green Bay, Cleveland. We talked about potentially Buffalo, or even joining his brother TJ in Pittsburgh. But Arizona is the winner there, and it's a 2-year deal for $31 million. He put it out on Instagram, source me, him working out with an Arizona Cardinals shirt on. And here's a guy that, okay, we know what he's been. He's a 3-time defensive player of the year in the NFL. He's had, multi double-digit sack seasons, but he's only had 9 sacks over the last 2 seasons. So in 2 parts. First of all, what do we think JJ has left?
Yeah, I think he can still be a very productive player. I mean, he's still a disruptor, and he's still a guy, when you break the huddle offensively, you've got to contend with. And now, instead of being the number one focal point of a football team when you break the huddle, now you couple him with Chandler Jones. And you can't, it's not like you can double team everybody, right? So the freedom that gives you to attack protection, the freedom that gives you to isolate individual players, like J.J. Watt in his prime when he was great, there was never I go back, and I don't all go all the way back to the beginning of football, but I would consider myself a historian of the game. And I played against Reggie White, and I played against Lawrence Taylor, and I played against Warren Sapp, and I played against a lot of guys that were John Randall, and a lot of guys who were phenomenal. And Reggie White, was a guy that would move up and down the line of scrimmage. Warren Sapp flip-flopped based on strength. Warren Sapp was way better over the left guard than he was on the right guard. It was just his preferred side. I have never seen a player equally adept. I can't even say the word. Adept. Thank you. Equally
You're
adept welcome. At lining up over the right tackle, right guard, left tackle, and open a can of whoop ass better than J.J. Watt. The side didn't seem to bother him. He was comfortable at any position, and I've never seen anybody as good as him up and down the line of scrimmage against, regardless of who he lined up against. So he gives you an opportunity to walk up a linebacker, walk up another defensive end, play him on a 3 technique, and get one-on-ones on guards, anywhere on the line of scrimmage. So I think he's still a very valuable asset, and coupled with a guy like Chandler Jones, I think this could be a very productive season for him, again, if he can stay healthy.
And just so people understand, here are the names of the top 2 sackers in the NFL since the start of the 2012 season: J.J. Watt and Chandler Jones, and now they're teammates. And that leads us to another interesting thing about the NFC West. Here are the quarterbacks now that we have in the NFC West: Kyler Murray, who we think is going to be very good; Matthew Stafford for the Rams, who we believe is going to be a significant upgrade in that offense over the Jared Goff of the last couple of years; Russell Wilson for the moment in Seattle; and Jimmy Garoppolo for the moment in San Francisco. So those are the 4 quarterbacks. And here are the edge rushers now in the NFC West: Nick Bosa coming back from injury, J.J. Watt and Chandler Jones coming back from injury, and Aaron Donald, another 3-time defensive player of the year. This is a let's see what happens matchup with the quarterbacks against these elite pass rushers, each playing each other twice a season. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It certainly will be, and it's funny. And I go back to playoff football, and as important as the quarterback position is, and it is, we know it's the most important position in sports. You show me the team that dominated the line of scrimmage, and I'll show you the team that won the football game. And
Super Bowl 55.
All you have to do, though, is go back to the game between the Rams and Seattle, where the starting quarterback gets hurt and an injured Jared Goff comes in, and
Yeah.
basically just holds down the fort as they run it down the throats of the Seattle Seahawks, and their defense is unstoppable. Like they're just getting after Russell Wilson. So, I mean, I get it. That division is brutal, just absolutely brutal. It should be a blast, but you better have guys that can disrupt the line of scrimmage and affect the quarterback's throws. Otherwise, you're in trouble in that division.
And I want to be 100% clear about this. This is not an anti-Tom Brady statement in any way, shape, or form. In no way. But we just played a Super Bowl where the Kansas City Chiefs were held to 9 points and not a single touchdown. Whenever Patrick Mahomes has started and finished a playoff game, the fewest points they've ever scored is 31 points. They were limited to 9, and Brady was the MVP. I mean, come on, man. I get it. I know we love quarterbacks. And did he play well? Yes, he played fine. But was he the reason that Patrick Mahomes and company were limited to 9 points? No, that should have been a situation like Super Bowl 12 when Harvey Martin and Randy White were co-defensive MVPs. You could have given it to Shaq Barrett and JPP, somebody on that. I mean, can we at least, not since Von Miller in Super Bowl 50, do we even acknowledge that defense helps you win a Super Bowl? It's ridiculous.
Devin White had 12 tackles.
Oh my God, he was amazing. Yes.
And by the way, it was interesting talking to Robert Saleh, and this was during the season, talking to him about expanding your zone and understanding the limits of your capabilities. And it's a coaching thing, right? And so if you're a hook dropper, for instance, and you're in the middle of the football field, you want to be 10 to 12 yards deep and you want to be 2 yards outside the hashes, right? That's your area. But hey, man, when you get really good and you've got that kind of speed and athleticism, can you get to 14 yards depth and 4 yards outside the hashes? Because now all of a sudden we can't throw the curl, right? We can't throw the dig. Like, can we expand our area and still get to our responsibility? And Robert Saleh was like, when you can do that, that's when you're an elite player. That's when, I mean, those are the guys, that you look at like a Devin White that just can expand an area and take away that quarterback's first throw or that first read. And even if he dumps it off, you still rally up and you make it for a 2 yard, make a tackle for a 2 yard gain. And then you're like, shoot, against anybody else in the league, we'd have gotten 7 yards on that. We'd be in second down and 3. Now we're in, second down and 8. And that's what those guys, that's the difference that a Levante David or a Devin White or Fred Warner or any of those guys that are elite level middle linebackers, that's what they did. And that's why somebody on that defense should have been the MVP. But, that's how we vote.
Yeah, I mean, the Rams were held to 3 points in a year they were the number one offense, and Julian Edelman, who played great. He was the MVP. It's like, I don't know. I mean, can we just acknowledge the other side of the ball? You mentioned Robert Saleh. He's the new head coach of the Jets, so good luck to him. And the Jets are in this quarterback quandary situation right now as we get set to pre-QB draft frenzy. And a lot of people are saying, well, do you move on from Sam Darnold? And my point is, hold up. Let's just take a breath here, because the history of quarterbacks being drafted in the first round, not great. Let's just be honest about it. Now, it looks like Joe Burrow, the number one pick, going to be good. Justin Herbert last year, good pick. I think there's still questions about Tua. So let's go back to 2019. Kyler Murray was the first overall pick. And yes, he's played well, but there's still a little bit of, okay, what exactly is he going to be? We go to 2018. Baker Mayfield was the number one pick. Sam Darnold was right after him, and now they're thinking about moving on from him. Josh Rosen was in the top 10, and he's barely hanging on. You go to 2017, Mitchell Trubisky was the first quarterback taken. He's looking for work. The top 2 picks, when the trades will become official in 2016, Goff and Wentz will have been shipped on to other teams. The top 2 picks of the 2015 draft, Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota, one of them's looking for work and one of them is a backup on another team. So I always find it somewhat hilarious when people are like, well, we'll just draft a quarterback and everything will change. No, because even if you draft Patrick Mahomes, as the Chiefs did in 2017, if you don't give him protection, if you don't give him weapons, if you don't give him good coaching, it's going to blow up in your face. So this is where the Jets are right now. Do we move on from Sam Darnold 3 seasons into his career? And my question is, how the hell do you know what he is? Because let's take the rookie year was a wash. 2019, he suffered from mono. That clearly set him back for most of that season, and he played great toward the back end. And this year was a disaster. Guess what? The entire team was a disaster. How can you say with any confidence, if you're Joe Douglas, the GM, or Robert Saleh, the new head coach, that you actually know what Sam Darnold is? And oh, by the way, let's say you move on and you get Zach Wilson out of BYU. Guess what the comp is for Zach Wilson? Sam Darnold. So it's like, don't do the thing where you're just running around chasing your tail. Do your due diligence and do what the Bills did with Josh Allen. Believe in the process that you picked him with, surround him with talent, and lo and behold, look what happened to Josh Allen this year.
Yeah, and if you go back through the Buffalo Bills, ever since Sean McDermott got there and Bean, the general manager, got there, you look at, it's not just about drafting starters. It's about drafting Pro Bowl type of starters,
Correct.
And you get White and you get Edmonds and you get guys that are good offensive linemen, and you start to build a roster that is really competitive. And so that's what I always look at. Here's the interesting thing. Obviously, the quarterback movement has been moved up because of the rookie wage scale, right? It doesn't cripple your franchise. So let's just go get one and keep kicking the can down the road, sell false hope, and tell our fans, hey, now we got a quarterback. And that's just false. It just doesn't work that way. And here's the crazy thing, for all the people that are like, oh, Zach Wilson, or oh, Trey Lance, or oh my goodness, Mac Jones.
Justin Fields.
Right. Yeah. We may never have this opportunity again. All right. So let me just walk you back. 2018, Baker Mayfield, going into his last season at Oklahoma, was considered a second round draft pick.
Correct.
2019, Kyler Murray was considered a second round, third round draft pick, number 1 overall. Baker Mayfield, number 1 overall. Oh, by the way, Joe Burrow, walking into his senior season at LSU, was a 6th or 7th round draft pick, went number 1 overall. Let me tell you what will happen next year. There will be a crop of 4 or 5 guys that are, oh my God, we got to go get this guy. If we don't, all hell's going to break loose and our franchise will be ruined. The bottom line is none of these guys will be successful if you don't have a roster to support said guys. Look at Kansas City. Oh, well, they got Mahomes. Well, guess what? Over the course of time with Andy Reid, in 2012, what do they get? They got Kelsey, and they got Fisher, and then they got Tyreek Hill in the 5th round. Yeah, and you look at
pick up Sammy Watkins. They drafted Mecole Hardman.
Right. They drafted 13 Pro Bowlers in that time. And all of a sudden, you've got a roster that's just ridiculously good on the offensive side of the ball. They go out and get free agents like Mitchell Schwartz. And the next thing you know, come on, you're winning 12 games a year with Alex Smith. And Alex Smith is a great player, don't get me wrong. But I just find the whole just draft a quarterback, any quarterback. It doesn't matter. Fall in love with 6 of them. It doesn't matter because it's going to work. It doesn't work that way. Football doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it's the most overdrafted position in football. And we're going to have probably 5 quarterbacks go in the first round, right? Trevor Lawrence is going number 1 to Jacksonville unless they do something ridiculously stupid. So then you're going to have Mac Jones, as you mentioned, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and Zach Wilson. We're probably going to have 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round. And I would imagine 3 of those quarterbacks probably won't pan out. So we do this. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. If you don't put things around any of these quarterbacks, none of them will be successful. Joe Burrow was having a good season, not a great season, a good season until he got injured because there wasn't a lot of talent around him in Cincinnati. I have no idea what Joe Burrow is eventually going to be unless they put better things around him. So the idea of just going and getting a quarterback, it drives me crazy. It absolutely drives me crazy. And that's why all these teams are always picking where they're picking.
Right. I'm 100% with you. And I just think this. If you think that, and I like Zach Wilson. I was watching Zach Wilson film the other day. He is like foot energy and arm talent and throwing into tight windows. He does it all. I thought he did it all well. But bottom line is I'm watching a bunch of YouTube clips. What the hell do I know? I'm not a draft guru or expert. I don't really care. But the bottom line to me is if you think Sam Darnold and Zach Wilson are pretty equal in talent, that 5 quarterbacks, as you mentioned, are going to get overdrafted, right? they're going in the top 10, or the majority of them are going in the top 10. So if I can trade out of that pick, like I can get myself top 10 talented player at 13, 14, right? Still get a top 10 player at number 12, 13, or 14, and then accumulate another third rounder and another first rounder for next year, whatever it is. Like if I'm a general manager, why would I not try to bolster my roster as well as I can bolster it with the great players, regardless of position? Just give me the greatest football players and we'll figure it out. But, picking another quarterback because, hell, that's what sells, that's what keeps my job for another 2 or 3 years is insanity to me. I'm 100% with you. I hate the way that we operate that position.
Well, the Mac Jones things is interesting, right? Because he had one hell of a year, very comparable to what Tua had his last year at Alabama. But then you have to step back and say, okay, why are these quarterbacks like Tua and Mac and Jalen Hurts, by the way, who played very well at Alabama as well, why are they having all this success? Because they get all the best players at Alabama. I mean, Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith were the two receivers he was throwing to until Jalen Waddle got hurt. Alabama always has the best offensive line in the draft. Guess what? At the next level, everybody has really good players.
Right.
So that's the thing you really have to look at when you're drafting quarterbacks, especially from Alabama, who win literally every other year since Nick Saban has been there. And I'm not saying Mac Jones isn't going to be great. I'm saying you have to think about these things when you're truly evaluating what you're seeing.
Well, the other thing, this was interesting. Our former colleague, Colin Cowherd, I was talking to him today, and he's like, well, Zach Wilson, as I watched him against, Utah, and I watched him against some really good teams, defense, Chris, what's the guy's name at Washington, University of Washington? Their head coach. Yeah, the head coach.
From Boise State.
Yeah.
Well,
gosh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We'll move on. So anyhow, he's like, I'm watching, these guys, and they really shut down Wilson and the smaller school, or the schools that don't have and I'm like, think about it this way. Look at Josh Allen. Here's a guy from Wyoming. Let me tell you what you don't get at Wyoming. You don't get the top talent on the outside edge. You don't get the top talent receiver. Like, to me, you're almost better evaluating those guys, because the one thing that, talking to quarterbacks, is I've moved over to Fox and I've done games. One thing is they have to learn what open is.
Yeah.
Especially the guys that come from big schools, because you know what you're throwing to? You're throwing to Devontae Smith at Alabama. He's 7 yards behind the guy covering it. Like, correct. When he runs a crossing route, he's 4 yards beyond that guy. And that's what you're used to throwing to. And then you get in the NFL, and these quarterbacks will say, the coach is just yelling at me like, dude, you got to throw that. That's the first read in the progression. You got to throw it. He goes, well, he wasn't open. No. He was wide open. This is the NFL. Here's his hands. Here's the defender's hands. That's wide open. Make that throw. You've got to be that accurate. And so my thing is, you're throwing and you're playing with lesser athletes. And if you're still competitive in that environment, when you play against a big school, when you play against greater athletes, that should deter you from drafting a kid. You should actually look at that kid and go, wow, look at what he's able to accomplish, even with lesser athletes against a better school. He's still being as competitive as anybody. Like, those guys, to me, are worth their weight in gold. You should look at those things.
Yeah, and tell Colin the next time you speak with him, remember the knock against Myles Garrett before he became the number one pick in the 2017 draft was, well, he had most of his sacks outside the SEC. I think Myles Garrett is fine. He's doing fine as a player in the NFL. That was the big knock against Myles Garrett. Didn't show up against the tough SEC opponents.
Did you see the YouTube clips of him playing basketball?
The box. Did you see the 64-inch box jump he put up the other day?
At 295, and then he's playing basketball, and it just, thunder dunking on people. Like, that dude is a frightening athlete.
He is a freak show. There's no question about it. And listen, this is the most inexact science there is. And we'll do a bunch of shows leading up to the draft. And it's fun because it's fodder and it's interesting. And we all want to know it because we need football and we want to talk football when it's not going on. But just understand that it's the most inexact science there is. There is no science worse than supposed gurus of draft. All right. The only thing worse would be, rating high school kids when they're 18 years old and projecting how they're going to be as 20 and 21-year-olds on the collegiate level. Those are the two most inexact things that we always try and guess and ponder and analyze and know with some great certainty that there is very little certainty in the entire process.
And well, that is 100% for sure, my friend.
Yeah. All right. So we'll do a lot more of these as we get closer to the draft. Just want to get caught up on what's happening here. Hey, I know you're taking the family to Disney World. Enjoy that vacation. This guy enjoyed his time in Hawaii. Trust me. And when you get back, we'll chop it up again. All right.
Absolutely. And I know you enjoyed your time in Hawaii because I followed you on Instagram with much jealousy.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah. All right, man. Later.
See you, buddy.